Hey, this is the Choctaw Boys, and we're going to teach you how to build your own computer. We have a bunch of parts here that are required for a PC. We don't have a CD-ROM. I didn't feel that it was relevant to have a CD-ROM because I do everything on a thumb drive, and so I left that out. We're going to go over some of these parts, and Liberty here is pretty good with computers too, so we're definitely gonna have fun doing this.
This right here is a random access memory. It's where you store where the programs and everything gets stored when the computer's running.
We have a total of 16 gigs, leaving room for expansion, of course.
Alright. We have 2 cards. And then we have right here a 750 watt power supply.
Yeah. When you have a big graphics card, as we've gone with here, you want a very big power supply to handle all of your needs.
And this right here is the AMD 8-core processor. I don't know much about it.
It's a good processor. It's top of the line for AMD at the moment. We're going to do a lot of heavy workload, and I thought it was appropriate that we'd have a good processor.
Right here we have a 500 gigabyte mechanical hard drive.
We're going to use that for storing our videos and photos, and a lot of the actual personal data will be stored on that.
And this right here is the motherboard.
It's a Biostar FX990 chipset, which is appropriate to use with the new AMD processors of the FX series. We also have a OCZ 80 gig solid state disk. We're going to actually install solid state drive. I'm sorry. We're actually going to be installing the operating system and like the Adobe suite and all of our programs that are very important to us on the solid state drive, so that they operate at their maximum speed. What else do we have? This is the GTX 580 Geforce card from NVIDIA. This specific card is manufactured by EVGA. This is not a top-of-the-line, latest and greatest graphics card, but it is a powerful graphics card, and I chose this specifically because it can utilize the CUDA core technology, allowing the graphics processor to take some of the workload off of the CPU. Doing things like rendering videos, it's very important to have extra help to make it work faster. Too many O's. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Lastly, we have the Asgard Pro case. I chose this case as a budget case, but I also chose it specifically because it was complete steel and metal construction. I didn't want any plastic parts, so while this is cheap for what its build quality is, it's not completely a cheap case. I wanted some rigidity and some strength to the case to keep everything safe. We're going to start unboxing and unpacking all the parts now. we're gonna continue this. As you may notice, Liberty had to leave us, so I'm gonna be finishing this build by myself while Casey films. Hopefully, you'll learn how to build a computer and have some insight into building your own system, if that may be something that you're interested in. I did cover the space where the processor goes because I didn't want any dust floating in the air to fall in there, because it would be very bad. As I said before, this is our FX AMD 8-core 8350 that we're going to put in here. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take this little lever and we're going to want to pull it back. And it's going to slide back and allow you to place the processor inside the slot. I'm going to take the processor out. It comes with a little sticker if you want to put a case badge showing that you have an FX processor inside your machine. I'm going to be very careful not to drop this. And you want to line up. You're going to want to line up. As I was saying, you want to line up. You want to be very careful to find out where the arrow is pointing on the chip to also be pointing in the very exact same corner as the motherboard's indicator. You don't want to force it in there or push it. You just want to give it a little wiggle to make sure that it's in the correct slot. Now when you're confident that the chip is in the correct location, don't add any pressure whatsoever. Take this little lever and push it down. Okay, now that we have our processor in and we have our little lever pushed down, the next process will be to put the heatsink and fan on, which I'm using the stock cooler because I don't plan to get too crazy with overclocking. And most stock coolers come with thermal paste applied. This is the cooler that comes with the AMD, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have my directions, and I'm going to go over them one last time before I try to put this in here. It's very important that you know exactly how to do this, because this is a one-time only deal and you don't want to break anything. I'm going to remove the protective plastic cap that you can see where thermal paste has already been applied. It's the gray block. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the plastic cap and get the heatsink and fan on there. Okay, I had to make sure that the little clips were seated correctly before I pulled the lever back on the cooler, pressing it up against the processor. And I was being very, very careful. Since it's now seated and the clips are in and I've pushed the lever back, securing everything, I'm now going to go ahead and plug my CPU fan power into the corresponding slot on the motherboard. Now your motherboard will, most of the time, have it marked where everything goes. And here it says CPU fan, and this is where you would want to plug in the power for your CPU fan into the corresponding header, of course. Now that we have that in, we want to go ahead and put in our memory to make sure that that fits correctly. Here, as you can see, we have two 8 gig sticks of G.Skill DDR3. and we're going to go ahead and pop these in and make sure there's no conflict between these and the cooler, which I don't believe there should be any conflict. The cooler is relatively out of the way. You always want to, in situations where your motherboard is dual channel, you want to have matching sticks of RAM, and you want to have 2 of them. As you can see here, these sticks of RAM come with some help to dissipate some of the heat on the top, and that's where you want to make sure that your cooler, if it's an aftermarket cooler, won't be in the way or run into these in any kind of way. Now, you want to slide these down into the correct slots and press down, and you should hear a clip when they're seated correctly. Your notch should line up with the notch in the corresponding slot. You always want to check that, because you could possibly break the stick of RAM if you try to seat it incorrectly. Okay, those clipped in. Now that we have our memory and our processor in place on the motherboard, we're going to set this off to the side, and we're going to go ahead and unbox the case that we're going to put everything in. We'll be putting the case, putting the motherboard inside the case next, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. This is the case that I've chosen, the Asgard Pro. It's kind of a thin case, but it is all steel construction, so it should hold up better than a plastic case. This one comes with thumb screws, so you won't need a screwdriver yet. You remove your thumb screws and put them somewhere safe, because you will need those again to put the door back in. Most cases today have cable management that goes back behind the motherboard to keep everything in your case not only looking nice but running cooler. When you have a bunch of wires running through your case, it can make your airflow, your cooling airflow, not work as efficiently as it could. Inside we have accessories. We have an additional slot sleeve to cover any holes that might need to be covered in the back. We have mounting screws. We have our documentation. And that is everything that's inside. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew the back so that we have access to the back side of things. Okay, I had to struggle a little bit to get some of these thumb screws off the other side of the case, but I've taken care of that. I'm going to go ahead and take the back panel off, which should help me get to the other side where we're going to do our cable management. Now, if you did have some nice fancy aftermarket cooling, you would want to preferably have this backside open, because they'll want you to install a brace on the motherboard, and that's where you would do that here in this area. Now, silly me, I forgot my PC toolkit, but I'm going to try to find a screwdriver and go ahead and finish putting in the motherboard. And I'll do a close-up of that, just like I did a close-up of putting in the processor and the memory. This is sort of important also. Okay, we've got our chassis laid down here, and we have it facing to where I can be able to tell where the mounting holes are. Now, there would be these little things. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is called a standoff. Now, this standoff is going to go into the case, and one end of it will be a screw, but the other end of it will also receive a screw. A motherboard will sit on top of this surface, and you'll use a screw to secure it down. So I'm going to go ahead and put all these standoffs in the correct location. You're going to want to look at your motherboard to reference the holes to where the standoffs need to go, because sometimes these cases will have multiple holes for different types of motherboards of different sizes. I'm going to go ahead and put in my standoffs now. Okay, it took me some time to get my standoffs in because the inside of this case is painted, and some of the paint got inside of the holes where you would put the standoffs in and screw them down. So I had a little bit of difficulty, but I got them in. Preferably you would have the correct tools to do this and not have to resort to using pliers like I did, because you don't want to strip anything out, of course. I am going to get the motherboard in there now. This is the case, as it is. Lots of different things, different wires that are part of the case that I'll need to plug onto the motherboard so we'll have full connectivity. I'm going to go ahead and put the motherboard inside the case now. Anything you do with the computer needs to be very sensitive when you're putting it together. So I'm going to try my best. Don't plop it in there. Very gently seat it in. This first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go ahead and put in your I/O shield, your input-output shield. And if you've ever looked at the back of a computer, you know there's places for you to put in USB devices or your audio cable or any array or assortment of connections are on the back of the computer. That's plugged in directly to the motherboard. And this input-output shield keeps the little things in place where they're supposed to be. You want to go ahead and make sure these little things are out of the way and that they won't damage anything relating to your computer or your motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and just some people may break them off. I'm going to just bend them back. And then once I'm done with this, we're going to put the input-output shield into the case. And I might get you a close-up of that whole process. And really what you're doing is you're just going to you're going to slide this into the correct location, and you're going to go ahead and pop it into place. And once that's into place, then you slide your motherboard into the corresponding location. Before installation, make sure this is facing the right way. I'm going to go ahead and show you if you can see that. This right here. Can you see this? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and install this. Make sure it's facing the correct way. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in right into the input-output slot. And go ahead and put your motherboard in. Hey, I went ahead and I put the motherboard in. I laid it in very gently, and I went ahead and it took me some time to sit there and get all the screws into the right place. I wasn't in a hurry, and so I went ahead and turned the camera off. So I went ahead and laid the motherboard in, and I screwed it down to the case. After that, I went ahead and I ran the wires that come with the case onto the motherboard. This motherboard came with a place for your fans that are on your case to go ahead and plug onto the motherboard. It also came with wires for the USB 3.0. It has a header down here for that, and the standard USB, as well as the standard case headers, which are typically a pain in the rear end to put in, just because they're so small. But I went ahead and wired everything. It's not the best looking. I have some cable management to do. But I'm going to go ahead and put in a power supply. And I'm going to go ahead and wire everything up as far as the power supply. And we should start putting in the graphics card and the hard drives after that. Here is our 750 watt power supply. This power supply I ordered. I did not know that this power supply had light up LEDs inside, which is a cool plus. It'll change between 3 different colors. Totally didn't know it did that, but it's a nice little bonus. This is a, if I'm not mistaken, this is a modular power supply. It is also a see-through, apparently. It's got a lot of cool little things. It's ready for Crossfire and SLI if you want to pair 2 of your graphics cards, similar graphics cards together to get more performance. For our purposes, I don't believe we will be doing any extra graphics cards other than the one we have. From what I've read, the performance on applications is just not there. So we may just forego that and just stick with our 1 graphics card. But back to our power supply. We can get it out of the box. We have some little tie downs. They're Velcro, so you'll be able to cable manage with all these cables, as well as our 125 volt power cable that goes to the back of the power supply. It also came with 1 user's manual telling you how to use the power supply. And some thumb screws for you to be able to screw this power supply down to your case. Well, let's go ahead and get the actual power supply out of the package. This is I guess not as modular as I thought it would be. I don't think it's modular at all, but it is in a shiny black case, which will look very interesting up against the matte black. So we'll have a shiny glossy black up against the matte black. So this will sit right here. Most power supplies used to be placed in the top of the case, but it's popular now for them to be at the bottom of the case. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this sucker in. Okay, now that we have our power supply in, we can go ahead and start wiring all of our devices. And getting power to our motherboard is a big deal, because this is such a power hungry motherboard as well as processor. There are extra connections to give the graphics card as well as other devices additional power. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook that up now. Hey, I went ahead and finished up everything in the PC. As you can see, it's in its UEFI/BIOS. Everything's been put in. Everything appears to be working correctly. I went ahead and put in the graphics card and put in the hard drive and the solid state disk and solid state drive. And everything seems to be working out okay. Hopefully you've learned something from this, and you will be excited to go build your own computer.
Yes, go out and build your own computers.
Do it right now.
And don't call me to fix it.
Yeah, unless you got money.
Unless you got money.
Alright. This has been Choctaw Boys with Build a Computer. If you want to say hi to Casey, come on. He's been filming all day for us. So, good job, Casey.
Today he was our cameraman.
Yeah, cameraman. I hope you enjoyed the video.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya.
All right.
Nope.